Hey, what's up, y'all? This is video number 39, I believe. Today's video is on a very interesting topic, which I'm going to call concepts of the soul in Greek philosophy. So, in the ancient times, we don't really know when exactly. Let's say a minimum of 1,000 years ago, probably slightly more than that, right? There was a highly developed system of Greek philosophy in terms of the soul, the human soul. So the component parts that make us, basically, right? And so I think I'm saying all this from memory of shit that I studied and read like a long time ago, 10 years ago or something more. So, but this is my memory of it, and I think it's basically correct. So they divided it into 4 categories of types of humans. So all humans possess these 4 souls in some degree, but most people tend to predominate in one or the other of the phases as they grow. But like as a person, you could actually learn and embody all of them if you try. No matter what type you are, you have a capacity to function within those other types, right? Okay, so let's start off with the helix. The bottom category was called helix. So helix were people, okay, hyle, H-Y-L-E, we would spell it now, was their word for like a primordial chaos of just like a mush of a swampy like blob. It's not really solid, it's not really liquid, it's just a mashup of everything into a big goo. That's hyle. So helix are people who would be, okay, here's an interesting one. You remember Fezzik from what's that story? That movie, The Princess Bride? Fezzik, right? So Fezzik comes from physic. So physic was like another way of referring to this. So physical things, right? Like for example. But Fezzik's Andre the Giant, right? He's like this massive, unstoppable blob of mass. And whatever he does, like, he's got that quality, He's solid. If you ever saw that movie, Space is the Place, this was the most awesome cinematic moment. I love the moment in Space is the Place where it's almost at the end, Sun Ra has almost completed his grand opus, right? And they find this gigantic black dude, and he's just sitting in the house, and he's just sitting there, and they gotta go roust him. They gotta go find him, and they roust him up, and they get him on the team. And once the team starts going, like, they follow the mission through all the way. But like, the point is rousing that tendency, right? So what is it that rouses that dude in the end and gets him animated? It's the spirit. But I'm just gonna point that out. I'm just saying this is okay. So Homer Simpson too is an example of a helix. A helix is like, okay, so they're not that bright, but they're imprintable, just like matter. They're imprintable, and once they get imprinted with something, like the momentum of their programming carries them really determinedly. Like Homer can get bashed in the head, and like nothing happens. Like he's already in such a state that doesn't even fade. Like there's one episode where he gets his head closed in an elevator door like a million times. So the thing people don't get is The Simpsons was written by Harvard students and stuff, and people that had studied all these classical dramas and these super like thematic like caricatures, almost characters that come up over and over and over again. So Homer Simpson's a perfect example of a Fezzik, right? He's very determined. He persists despite impossible odds, but he's not that bright. You know what I mean? So there's a type of person called helix in the Greek philosophy of soul, and they were considered, I don't want to say irredeemable, but they're considered only suitable for a certain type of education because they're really not capable of certain aspects, right? So Like, as from a philosopher's point of view, that's a person that you never really want to bother arguing with. The only thing that convinces them is materials, money and different shit like that. So that's a helix. So the next, okay, helikoi, all right, that's a plural noun. So then we have the next level would be called this psychikoi. Psychikoi comes from the word from like psyche, psychological. So psychikoi is basically a person with emotional consciousness. So I have the consciousness of interrelatedness and vibes, basically. That's where they chill, is in the emotional realm of the psyche. Right? What we think is beautiful or ugly, our aesthetic sensibilities, and all these different tastes that we have. So psychics are psychic, right? That's the modern word, is actually psychic. So psychic is a person that is emotionally aware, let's put it that way, or they have the potential to be. They're emotionally the most sensitive of all the types, right? That's their realm. It's like a fish swims in the sea. That's the realm is that they're in. And so whereas a physicoi would basically try to run the world through physical mass, like being big, having a lot of momentum to carry around. Like once you get it moving, it's like really carrying it. And so, but the psychikoi, their currency and their way of gaining power and influence and stoking their ego in the world comes through emotions. So they see emotions like as a currency. Like they'll basically front in a certain way and present a certain mask of themselves to manipulate emotional energy, because that's their currency and that's the way they see their world. That's the way they see themselves as getting power. That's the way they see as wealth and goodness and status is like this ability to fuck with emotional energy. and don't get me wrong, like although most of these people are very low end, they're not. It's like another form of narcissism, but it's just narcissism on the plane of emotional energy. So they want to always be attracting that. Drama queens, okay, everyone knows that phrase. Drama queen. They thrive on provoking emotional fluctuations and like scenes. They like to make a scene. So anyway, these are tsukikois. That's the second level, right? And then the third higher level, let me see, I want to make sure I get all these correct because like I said, it's from memory. Well, let's just put it this way. I think the pneumaticoi might be the highest level. So the pneumaticoi were like, okay, so pneumatics now we think of as like the science of air pressure, like tires are pneumatic, right? I think the French word for tires, which means like a gas, a gas or a fluidic that thing that can be exchanged. So the pneumaticoi, this is super deep. Okay, so the pneumaticoi now are into what I would consider bioelectricity. They're at an actual level of bioelectricity. Like the tsukikois are into this one level of it, like an emotional vibe, right? But the pneumaticoi, they're more into, I'm trying to think how to phrase that word. Okay, so like we would call it chi. That's one really good way to describe it. So chi or prana, this life force, right? The Chinese ancient alchemists and stuff, they would refer to human beings as a wind machine, right? A wind machine. Think about that. So we breathe. We have to breathe. And we exhale. Like we have to always be doing both of those things. So in a way too, it's like an engine. Input and exhaust. Like that's how engines work too. So intake and exhaust, sorry, that's how they would tend to say it, but you get the idea. So pneumatics are in this intake system, right? Intake and exhaust system. And they're it's a gas. We breathe air, right? So this is how we get energy. So it's a higher level. It's a more, not really higher, but it's like a more rooted level of access to that energy, where it's just like breathing in and out. Like, and so what now, okay, so whereas the tsukikoi see the energy as like emotional energy, the pneumaticoi see the energy as more or less purely energetic, you know, like pure energy. It could be any form. Like light is a form of energy. Sound vibrations are a form of energy. The nutrients that we intake and the gases that we breathe, and all, we know we're breathing all these different gases in like trace amounts. So that's pneumaticoi. That's what they would be thinking about. I could go into how all the tarot cards and shit relate to this too. It's very similar, and it's actually very similar to Carl Jung's like personality types, the 16 major personality types, right? Or I think they use that on the Myers-Briggs test too. So like, anyways, so the pneumaticoi were highly advanced. They were considered one of the more advanced like classes of people in these different souls that they would be in touch with. So this is a person like a pneumaticoi kind of in our world would kind of manifest as like an energy healer or one of these high-end like energy medicine practitioners. You know what I mean? But I think for me, the real pneumatics and the power is in nature, in natural places. Like for example, like if you go to the coast right here, where the waves are constantly crashing, like you're going to be breathing a lot of ozone, which I think is really healthy. It's really good. It cleanses the ionic field of the energy field of the body, for one. I mean, there's a lot of other aspects to the gases down here, but like, I'm just saying a pneumaticoi is the type of person that would be really aware of this external energy that's not necessarily human emotional energy, but it's just external energy on a broader scale, right? But these are rare. Like pneumaticoi would be maybe 1 in a couple 100,000 out of humans, or less even, you know? But people, okay, here's people that I think were beginning in the phases of being pneumaticoi, right? It's a person that their cultural creations, and if, you know, the Germans have the word Zeitgeist, which means the spirit of the times. So if you can tap into the Zeitgeist, whatever you create, if it gets out, will become this like, okay, Star Wars, for example, right? And how did that get produced? It was basically fucking George Lucas talking to Joseph Campbell about Tibetan Buddhism, basically. Kind of, that's how it is, you know? Well, he took the hero's journey, you know, and created Luke Skywalker. Like, that's what his idea was. And he put up Campbell and his wife, I think, were living on Skywalker Ranch or whatever at the end. So he acknowledged that, you know, for whatever extent. And like, but anyway, the point is, that's the pneumatic level. That's the level where you're so in touch with the energy fluctuations of humanity and the whole planet itself that like whatever you create like hits this resonant tone with the zeitgeist with time, and it's a wave that it rides. It's a wave of this like collective human energy, you know? So like Tolkien, I would say, was one of these people. Like, think about every fantasy genre, like 10% of all Led Zeppelin songs, like everything, all these movies, like all the role-playing games, like Dungeons and Dragons, none of that shit would have never gotten a grip without Tolkien, dude. He was the creator of all that shit. And so like, you know, 30% of all modern video games, basically, you got to give Tolkien $1 million. Give everybody, you know, it's like, try to understand where this shit really comes from. So someone that taps into the zeitgeist like that, you know, pneumaticoi. So that's the thing that I think most humans today are phasic. They're phasic big time. They've been bred into it, for one, and their food and everything that they're given keeps them phasic, you know, keeps them like pellet, like a rat with a pellet in the fucking, you know, in the Skinner box maze, you know, like looking for nutrients. And that's where the phasics are all at. They don't know what energy is. They're completely emotionally illiterate. Like, I know 1 million people in my life that I could describe a complete phasic. Like, their emotional awareness is zero. Like, their awareness of vibe of anybody ever is zero. Like, they're more just like a massive fucking sea lion or like a big ass bear or a fucking elephant that just charging at whim, you know? So watch out for the phasics, man. And always remember, whatever level you're at, there's a higher level to get to of energy awareness and the causality matrix that we live in. So that's today's topic, is Greek philosophy of the human soul.